Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really into the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London, where you can find stuff possibly unavailable anywhere else. We're an established group and very friendly. The link is in the YouTube description section.
Welcome back. We continue my story of my time with the Krays. They were crazy days. My name is Albert Donoghue. I was chief growler and rent collector for Ronnie and Reggie right up to 1968, when we were all arrested by Nipper Reed and his Scotland Yard team. Somehow, the twins had come to understand that to get away with running a criminal enterprise in the middle of a moderately law-abiding community, you had to carry local opinion with you. The locals didn't have to approve of your rackets. Your average East Ender would normally turn a blind eye whatever you were up to. But if you wanted to win general goodwill and discourage straight folk from shopping you when the police came snooping, you had to be seen doing good works in public. That's why the twins consciously created their charitable image. This started as a myth. They weren't charitable at all, and became a legend. The gullible, the religious, and the just plain dumb spread it around the East End, as if it was not only true but also uplifting. The legend was this crude. People really did believe the Krays were good to dogs, old ladies and nuns. Well, you'd have to be some kind of psycho not to have some kindness in you, say, for an old girl down on her luck. Of course, you'd give her a fiver if you had it, or a couple of quid. But the twins were very conscious of their image, and they worked a lot on it, thanks to Leslie Payne, their main business schemer, who had impressed on them the public relations side of organized crime. And so they would hire a pub or club, or use one of their own premises, and they'd let it be known that they were organizing a charity night. A regular good cause was the Bancroft Hospital in Mile End. They would invite a ward sister and probably a matron from the maternity unit, as well as the mayor, the local priest, and most importantly, a few people off the local weekly paper, the East London Advertiser. Then they would go to a couple of local florists and ask them to make up one of those big floral display baskets. They'd do the same with the local fruiterer. Then they would hold these baskets up for auction, and they would start off the bidding at a tenner, £20, £25 and up. But what people didn't realise was that instead of just the last bid being collected, all the smaller intermediate bids were also being extracted. Then when the proud winner was presented with his basket, one of us would be standing nearby and embarrassing him by shouting, "Offer it up, offer it up," forcing him to put the basket back into the auction all over again, but still obliging him to pay over what he'd already bid to win. For this, the poor guy would get a clap. People would say, "What a wonderful chap he is," and then the prize item would go again, and all the proceeds would be collected up for some good cause. Often it would be the kiddies unit, a good one for tugging at the emotional heartstrings. Sure, it got some dough, but in next week's East London Advertiser, it was the twins who got the glory. An article would appear saying, "Local sporting gentleman donated a sizable sum of money to the maternity unit, complete with a big blazing photograph." To guarantee the story would get a decent spread, the twins would make sure a few well-known sporting names, like the boxer Terry Spinks, would turn up in all innocence to back the good cause. There were other ways we used to raise money for charity. We would visit local businesses like the florists, and somebody who half knew them would say, "Listen, the other two are doing a charity night, and would you like to do us a flower arrangement?" The MC will say, "This arrangement is by Mary Jones, the florist shop, so you'll get a bit of advertising." And so the shop would produce the goods, but we never paid for them. We just got them to do it for us with a smile. The net result was that the credit didn't go to dear Mary Jones. All she got out of it was the mention of her shop. In contrast, the Krays appeared to be very generous, which, I suppose they were, with other people's money. They also practiced their own brand of community policing. Sometimes people would come to the twins and say they'd been tucked up, or somebody had jumped all over them. If Ronnie or Reggie already knew the plaintiff, they would listen to find out who had done the foul deed. If they had a previous reason to dislike the offender, they were more likely to do something to him. Any action would now appear to be a favor to the guy who'd come for help, whereas they were just settling their own long-term feud. Only the guy would think they'd done him a favor, so he would now owe them a favor. But that was the exception. 9 times out of 10, all they'd do is tell a lieutenant like me, "This man's boy got a slap round the Regency, so tell the guy who did it to piss off." Otherwise, the Krays weren't in the business of settling other people's problems. For instance, if a girl claimed she'd been assaulted or raped by some tow rag, that wouldn't have troubled the twins at all. They would have thought, she's probably an old slag anyway, and that would be the end of it. On the other hand, if they were trying to court the girl's father or brother, they might say, "Leave it to us, we'll sort it out." Then they might well say, "Right, we'll go and give him a slap." Not many legitimate people ever asked such favors. The twins would think it must be a setup if ever a straight person did come to Fort Valence and say, "Listen, could you help us out over so-and-so?" They'd say to themselves, "Who is this stranger?" And they'd go in the other room and keep asking all of us, "Who is he?" Then they'd send someone else in to talk to him, because by now they were thinking there's some sort of wind-up here. Perhaps the police were behind this guy and trying to entrap them. The twins' paranoia about spies and infiltrators was partly a reflection of their own mass exploitation of spies and infiltrators into other gangs. Most of their own 1,000 spies contributed information only occasionally, but there were several full-time professionals. One was called Joe Schaffer. He was just like someone out of Fiddler on the Roof, a typical old Jewish gentleman. He would creep around all the places frequented by other mobs. He knew everybody, and anything we needed to hear, he would tell us. Or you could send him on special trips, specific missions. Have a look round so-and-so, or see what you can find out about this person. Then he'd go out and discover if this target was using a particular club, or how the individual or group was moving around the West End. I could not stand spies like old Joe Schaffer, even though they were meant to be working for us. Those people were creepy, but they all had a use. The twins could get them to do anything for a $5. That pair had a talent for finding just the right bloke for any job, but they had no training for this. Nowadays, you go to college to learn business management, even industrial espionage. But Ronnie and Reggie knew it instinctively, just as they knew how to terrorize people better than any terrorist. They knew how to question folk and how to kid them. It was just basic instinct. And you could see it working, you could see it unfold from one day to the next. You'd get an idea one day and discuss it with the twins. They'd go silent for a while. Then they'd say, "Oh yeah, get hold of so-and-so." They'd know exactly who to put into a scheme to make it work. And work it would. I'm not thinking only of grand scams, but of all sorts of little rip-offs too. Say we want a decent car, because we've got to pick up a top American boxer like Barney Ross. So we decide it's an American Galaxy we need. So the twins send a family friend called Nobby Clark to get hold of that. He's packed off to see Horace, the car dealer over South London, who deals in Yankee motors. Go and get hold of Horace, the twins would say, and they'll pick out Nobby for the job, because they know that if one of us guys on the firm goes over, Horace would immediately realise it's a straightforward blag. So it would be, Send Nobby over to see Horace. Tell him the boys want to borrow a car. They've got to meet someone. Then invite Horace to the party. That's why, when you see those posed photos that the Krays were so fond of taking, you'll often see a lot of funny, unfamiliar faces. That was usually the only reason they'd been invited. Have your photo done with the ex-world champion as part of the perks. The poor dupes didn't realise that the invite and the photo were all they'd be getting. They certainly weren't getting paid for the loan of the limo or supplying the booze. That was just the soft part of the business. There'd be no explicit coercion, not a whiff of violence. Although even a straight man like Horace would have known not to mess with Reggie and Ronnie. Some people might never have had anything to do with the twins, might never have met them or known they exist. But these innocents could still be gunned down on Ronnie's orders. One day, Ronnie got a message from a man he'd met in jail who was still locked up. This guy was complaining that his wife was having it off with a carpet salesman who worked in Romford Market, and he was asking Ronnie if he could get the salesman seen to. So the Colonel told Ronnie Hart and Connie Whitehead to go and shoot him. We had his car number, and a dealer got us his address from hire purchase documents because he was buying the car by installments. So Hart and Whitehead drove off to Romford and came back, telling how Hart had gone up to this carpet guy in the market and shot him in the hip, while Whitehead stayed in the driving seat for a quick getaway. Then they described how the impact of the .38 bullet had made the victim do a somersault. As soon as I heard this, I knew it was baloney. I could tell it had never happened. But I wasn't going to say this to Ronnie Kray, because the fellow should not have been shot anyway. Even though I bit my tongue, I could see Ronnie wasn't sure about their story either, because he said, "Be in the paper, won't it?" "Yeah," said Connie and Ronnie Hart in a faltering way, as if they didn't believe it themselves. "Let's get the local Romford and Dagenham papers," said the Colonel, as by now both the twins wanted proof that the guy had been hurt. So someone was sent out to get all the papers, but there was nothing in them. So, to defuse the situation, I said, well, if the bullet has gone right through the guy, he's not going to report it. He's going to go home and patch it up, so it won't be in the papers, will it? I didn't have to say this was what I had tried to do when Reggie shot me, but Ronnie got the message. "Oh yeah," he said, and he stood for it. He was convinced. So I looked at Hart and Whitehead, and I could see the relief on their faces. I should have gone into them for barrister's fees. Ronnie Hart told me later he had no intention of doing the guy. Nothing to do with us. So we weren't blindly obedient to the Colonel when he was in one of his silly moods. We just worked our way around it because we knew that in a few days' time he would have totally changed his mind. Then he'd probably say, "Oh, sorry about him. He wasn't a bad fellow, really." But by then it would have been too late. He'd have been gone. With these shoot-to-kill orders being issued for no good reason, even us members of the firm took precautions in case Ronnie condemned us to death. This was no paranoid fantasy. Most of us had been recruited through violence, and we could all see that it wouldn't be long before Ronnie took his violence to the ultimate degree and killed somebody. I'm not being wise after seeing what happened later. It was happening within the firm as soon as 1965, when he was already operating what he called his list. It didn't take much to get on the list. It must have been in early summer 1965, when Ronnie had called a meet one afternoon at a house in Ilford, off the Eastern Avenue, near a big roundabout. A Jewish girl named Sandra lived up there, though she wasn't around when Ronnie unveiled his deadly intention against one of our own colleagues on the firm. Suddenly, he announced he wanted to see Connie Whitehead. Then out came the tools. It was a hammer stuck under this cushion, a Gurkha knife under that one, an iron bar over there. All so that when Connie came in the room, wherever he sat, a tool would be handy and he was going to get done. Now, there we all are, stuck in the house. Nobody can leave, and nobody can use the phone, in case they warn him. But of course, somebody still had to tell Connie to come to this house. So Ronnie ordered Fat Wally Garelick to phone Connie up and kid him into coming. Meantime, Ronnie, me, and somebody else, I can't remember who, were all going to be ready to ambush him and send him to his maker. Well, Wally went out to phone Connie, but instead of kidding him into showing up, he warned him not to come. He just said to Whitehead, "Don't show, they're going to kill you." And so, he didn't show. Meantime, Wally came back in the room. While we were all waiting for Connie, who should show up instead but the police, who'd been called by suspicious neighbours curious about why so many obvious thugs were padding around Sandra's flat. These coppers came in and took our names and addresses, but they didn't bother to search the place or look under the cushions. Anyway, they went away, and Connie never showed up. He owed his life to Fat Wally. Now, Wally had warned Connie partly because he felt, on past form, that the delay would give Ronnie time to wear off his mood and calm down. And very likely tomorrow, he would see whatever Connie had done to upset him in an entirely different light. Well, all that was fine for Connie, but by tipping him off, Wally had now put himself on the line, because he was the only person who could possibly have given the warning. For a couple of months, Ronnie seemed to forget entirely about doing Connie. Instead, he brooded on Fat Wally Garelick, first by dropping him out from the fringes of the firm, and then by suckering him down to where he was due to meet a fate even worse than Ronnie had planned to inflict on Connie. It was now high summer, when the twins often stayed at Steeple Bay, near Colchester, where their mum and dad had a caravan. At weekends, Fat Wally Garelick used to ferry people down there in a big old rover, with plenty of room for huge hoodlums. This particular weekend, down Wally came to join half a dozen other folk. But Ronnie was in one of his moods, some kind of depression, and as soon as he saw Wally, he called him into the van. He was going to kill him there and then. He was going to kill the man himself. Now Wally was a big man. He was only 22 years of age, but he weighed 22 stone. He was vast, yet harmless, but Ronnie was going to do him with a kitchen knife in his mother's caravan. Until somebody managed to get Wally out of earshot and told Ronnie that, because of Wally's size, he would have to stab him at least 10 times, and this would make a terrible mess of his mother's caravan. That stopped it. Ronnie decided not to proceed, but only because he didn't want to upset his mum. It was as close as that. So very easy. Whether that guy lives or dies. Of course, the reason why the Colonel had picked on Wally was because it could only have been Wally who had disobeyed him and warned Connie Whitehead. Here were two clear conspiracies to murder. The year before, Ronnie finally managed to make his bones and kill someone. If Connie had turned up, he would surely have been killed. And if Wally had been lighter, we would have had to wrap him in the carpet, take him out from the caravan and dump him somewhere. He would have gone. So that summer, several of us led charmed lives. Not just Connie and Wally, but me and the rest of the firm too, because we could all have been done for murder along with Colonel Ron. It still wasn't over, because Ronnie hated Connie and was still looking for a way to get him done. He saw his chance at the Starlight one night, while I was working there as the security man. Connie was being a bit flash, and had upset our colleague on the firm, Scotch Jack Dixon. Ronnie picked up on this, and stirred Scotch Jack up into a Scotch broth. He was stamping around and complaining to Ronnie that Connie Whitehead, I don't know what he's being so flash about. This suited Ronnie just fine, so he said to Jack, well, go and do him. As I've said, Jack wasn't the toughest of men, and he didn't think he could come off best in a head-to-head with Connie, so he told Ronnie, no, I don't fancy it. But Ronnie urged him on. Wait till he's getting a drink, then do him in the back. And Ronnie meant do him with a knife. I couldn't interfere directly, but I could see that at this moment, Connie was at the counter with his back to Jack, just as Jack was psyching himself up to do him. Then Connie came away from the counter, so Jack wouldn't be able to do it for a while at least. Then Connie came past me through a little lobby where I was standing, on his way to the toilet. So I said, "Get out. Just get out." He didn't need any more telling. He walked right on past the toilet and out. He could have been killed that night as a follow-on to the Ilford business. Only this time, Ronnie was trying to get someone else to do the murder for him. In this homicidal climate, it wasn't surprising that we all began to take serious precautions against Ronnie's mad and murderous moods. Well, we've reached the end of another part. I do hope you are enjoying my recollections of my time with the twins. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next time.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London.